Welcome to the Feria TechCast, where we bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. Today, we are joined by Alan Ward, a fintech innovator who believes money should serve people, not the middlemen. Alan is the founder of a payments platform that cuts out hidden transaction fees and brings fairness, transparency, and simplicity back to finance. With a passion for helping families and businesses keep more of what they earn, Alan blends cutting-edge innovation with timeless values of trust and community. His goal is simple: to make finance work for real life, whether that means supporting a growing company or helping a family build a stronger future. Alan, welcome to the show.
Hello, Ezekiel. Glad to
Yeah,
be here.
yeah, I'm excited to have you here today. So quickly, Alan, let's dive in. The core philosophy behind Securely is that money should serve people, not the middlemen. What was the specific moment or experience that made this more than just a business idea, but a personal mission for you? And quickly, can you give us an overview about Securely?
Sure, they're one and the same there. That moment was a period of time, and it's the birthing place, the essence of where Securely came from. So I was in the distribution world in the B2B space, finding out that no matter how much money we ran through the big banks, those fees to get paid continually went up and up and up. And the technology for payment on delivery and other things that are really helpful in the B2B space was very weak in the mid-teens. And so a little bit later there, I exited that space and stayed on with the company and realized that it could be solved for, needed to be solved for. So created a company called Zero, XER, to take payments to zero for businesses. And that was the genesis of what Securely has become today. Yeah, we started as a traditional payment company and pretty quickly recognized that the problems couldn't be solved inside of the existing architecture and inside the existing system, and that new advances have to be made. And with open banking becoming a reality in the late teens, some technology that wasn't available began to become available. That, with what we created, is what Securely is today. But there was that period of time of being that business that was bearing the burden and the brunt of a tremendous expense that seemed unnecessary. And the more that we've jumped into it, the more we've realized that it was completely unnecessary.
All right, Alan. So for our audience of builders and engineers, can you pull back the curtain a bit? So tell us, what does the architecture of a more transparent payment system look like? How do you technically design a platform to bypass traditional fee structures?
Yeah, great question. And so there's cutting edge and there's bleeding edge. I don't need to bore everyone with the definitions of those. Obviously, you don't want to be too far out front. And then there's evolutionary and revolutionary technology. Evolutionary technology, if you'll bear with me, you can take a look at the late 1800s, early 90s to see the difference. And so from the beginning of time, it was you got around on foot, and then you got around on a horse, and then teams of horses and wagons. And that was the advancement for I don't know how many thousand years. And then in the late 1800s, you had Carl Benz and the auto wagon. And then literally a few years later, you had Henry Ford and the
Yeah.
quadricycle. And then within 28 years, you had the first assembly line of the Model T. So we're talking 28 years, you had revolutionary technology. For thousands of years, you had evolutionary technology. And so what makes that difference? That's what we believe Securely's done. Securely has gone inside of an existing system that for years has been dependent on a few major players. And
Hmm.
it's been a system that there's so many hands in the cookie jar, or, what we'd call feeders on that the payments value chain, that from insertion of the card to money being deposited to the merchant, almost all
Hmm.
those hands that get paid from the merchant. And payers don't realize, our economy doesn't realize today that Small and large business alike bears the brunt of that. So Securely has come to provide an answer for that. And that answer is not entirely outside the existing system. You often can't disrupt a system only from the outside. You have to be able to leverage what people know, get people comfortable enough, and give technology time to catch up. If you go back to the automobile example, there were many non-adopters early of the Model T. You ask why? Well, because I know how to maintenance and feed a horse, but I don't know how to
Yeah.
maintenance and feed a Model T. But what about the infrastructure? Was it there? No. No, roads were built for horses. Fortunately, the Model T had high ground clearance. So what Henry Ford figured out is if I build a car that can work today, it could excel tomorrow. And so that's
Mm.
what we've done is we've gone inside the existing structures and said, we can't necessarily bypass all the costs. Card brands and others have built great networks. They're worldwide networks. They're worth, you know, upwards of $500 billion in what they do because they've done business well. So we said, how do we help identify the cost and give the tools to the company, to the business that were always kept close to the vest by processors and major banks? And so we took that technology, built it into a platform, and gave that then to the business. We also have a proprietary payment method that works outside of that, inside the existing structures of the banking world, but outside of the structure of many forms of digital payment. And that's called digital cash. It's our proprietary method. We go into the bank account, we validate the funds, we move the money in a batch format, and it's funded next day. Very similar to your card brands and other forms of money movement, validated forms of money movement, but done outside the system, so at a fraction of the cost. Coming with stablecoins and other things that we're working on, there's a bright future inside the payment infrastructure that is very different than what we've always experienced. But today, it's like it enough that a company can transition, feel safe, secure, have visibility into cost, and still have speed of transaction. You've got to preserve these things for business to continue today as you progress and innovate into tomorrow.
Okay, that was really insightful, dear Alan. So, you are a founder in the competitive fintech space and a father of six. So, does the reality of managing a household budget and family finance directly influence the features and priorities that you set for your technology?
Managing a house budget influence feature sets. I mean, I guess you could take the long way around to say to try and answer that. Maybe yes. There's not really, I wouldn't say a direct correlation there. The way that feature sets are primarily done inside of Securely and the way that our priorities are set are based on the ultimate vision of taking payments and making that infrastructure both present and clear for the business. And so what the infrastructure provides in clarity is you go to a restaurant and as a family, when I check out, I know what I'm paying for. I know how much that meal cost me. Did you know that the restaurant doesn't? The restaurant does not know their total cost in that. And I'm not talking about the ingredients. I'm talking about the cost to get paid. They're going to find out at the end of the month when the different forms of payment come to pull their fees. And so we said, if you want to draw the correlation to a family budget, a budget is built on the concept that I can identify costs and buckets of cost ahead of time. And so you've got this black box. It's a top 5 expense in most businesses. I was talking with a major national brand yesterday, and they said outside of performing our service well, getting paid is the second most important priority at our company. And it's a top 5 expense. And they don't know what it is for 30 days. So yes,
Mm.
similar to a family budget, we want to make these costs identifiable and then controllable such that they have granularity down to the individual transaction level to say there's going to be a this much cost associated with this transaction. And if we want to include that in the sale, now to show that transparency to the payer, we can do that. Now the payer understands, man, I like this form of payment, but it costs a lot more. They never knew that before. The business couldn't clearly delineate that to the payer because they didn't know until the end of the month either. They knew in general cost me about this much. Better pad our costs about this much. But you can't run a business in generalities. If you're going to be competitive and really advanced, you got to get into the details. Talk to any CFO. All they want is granularity into the money, and they want cash flow. And we help with both.
All right. So, Alan, I am curious about the early days. Can you tell us about any time or any point in time that you hit a major technical or regulatory wall? And also tell us, what did that problem-solving session look like? And what did you learn from that breakdown?
Yeah. If we're going to go very early, once again, being an entrepreneur, I jumped into this payment world trying to solve a problem that I'd experienced, but I recognized that it was not just industry wide. It's across the economy.
Hmm,
It's a real issue, and being very green, very ignorant in the depth of financial technology, specifically in payments. And so I just said,
hmm,
let's go get into the payments world. Payments is synonymous largely for just reselling credit card services, and got into that and real quickly realized that the ability to take payments to zero wasn't going to happen with interchange. And so interchange is a base fee inside of a lot of card brand transactions. It goes to a lot of players, and it's a helpful fee for a lot of reasons, but it can be pricey. And so I hit that wall and recognized that existing technology wasn't going to solve the problem. And so what I'm not talking about, and maybe your question relates to, is a bit more of a specific engineering session where we solved around something. This is a more macro or a high level picture. But in that, I did join with a couple of technologists and said, here's the problem. Here's available technology. These are ways available technology is being used. And how can we go about this with what we have with an eye on maybe what's not here yet, but I see it coming. And so we started
hmm.
building a bridge, and the material to finish the bridge it was not accessible in the marketplace yet. And but it was coming, and it came in time, frankly. And so today, the way that our infrastructure moves money, it wasn't possible in 2016.
Okay, that's really insightful. So, Alan, trust is the foundation of any financial product. From a technical and business standpoint, what were the most critical steps you had to take to build a platform that people could feel secure, trusting with their transactions?
No, your traditional certifications are crucial in business. You have to adhere to PCI. You got to run your business responsibly. You got to teach every team member the value of being mission critical infrastructure. And so your certifications from PCI when you're in the medical world, from HIPAA, SOC 2, Type 2, eventually moving into high trust, you've got to make certain that any vendor relationships you have adhere to the same security principles that you have. You've got to have just a myriad of policies and procedures inside of your organization for your own integrity. And this isn't just for your clients. This is for a company to be able to stand in front of other businesses and say, trust us with moving your money. You
Mm,
can't miss a penny. It's not traditional software world. It's financial technology. It's mission critical infrastructure. And it's one that's built, once again, it's built on trust, but you've got to operate in a way that's trustworthy. And so we're just big, big. It's our name, securely. We're big on being secure, and the approaches that we take, which I won't discuss here on this podcast, but the approaches that we take security, some would consider potentially over the top, but any of our clients would say thank you. And that's how we've done it. That's how we're going to do it.
So, for the developers and entrepreneurs listening, what's one piece of counterintuitive advice you would have about building a tech company that is driven by values like fairness and transparency rather than just pure growth?
Well, I think the concept of being value driven probably applies far beyond a financial technology company. But the
Mm,
reality is, very early on, I believe anyone will, but we've certainly had the opportunity to bend or lay down those values for gain. And so a value is only a value when it stands to the test of fire, the test of time, the test of opportunity. when you're willing to forsake opportunity to stand by a belief or a value, then you have one. And so a concise piece of advice I would say is have few values. In other words, few stakes in the ground for your company, but let them be stakes in the ground. Build around those, not through them.
Great, great, great. So the fintech landscape is a bit crowded. So beyond the technology itself, what's the biggest mindset shift you are trying to create in how both businesses and individuals think about their payment processes?
Man, great question. That's probably one of my favorite questions. So you can cut me off at any time
Yeah,
on
sure.
this one. But let's go back. Let's go back to the automobile. So you ask yourself now, with hindsight, why on earth would someone stay with a horse when there's an automobile, right? So when there's revolutionary opportunity, why aren't there adopters? Can you imagine me putting my 6 children on a horse and going on vacation? So we're in Texas and we'll just run over to Tennessee on a horse. Yeah. Actually, I've got some that would love that. Absolutely love that, but I
Oh,
don't
wow.
see it happening practically. Why aren't there adopters? What is that mental shift that has to take place when not evolutionary, but truly revolutionary technology starts to happen? Well, if you go back to the vehicle, there was a starter crank on those, and there were reports of people breaking their arm because they didn't hold that, and as it got tighter and tighter, it would come loose, break their arm. And so there was fear of loss in that, or fear of injury. So there's also, when you look back at the Model T, there was a lack of comprehension of what you don't understand or know. Because going from here to Tennessee in a matter of hours was never even a concept that wasn't on the table as a potential benefit. And so when a person or a company has fear of loss and then they can't see what the benefits are, when you put that on the scale, what happens? You cannot make good decisions. And so revolutionary technology sometimes can move up quick enough that a business makes a decision that is just completely absent of context and information. Let me give you an
Hmm.
example. Earlier days inside of Securely, a distributor out of South Florida, actually, and they distribute all over the United States, but headquarters down there. I'm on with two of the leaders, and I'm on an email chain, and they're going back and forth, and they're asking me, what so so what Securely does is we have technology that can discern the cost of any payment type in real time and provide that cost in full or part to the payer according to business logic. Business owns all the tools and the rules. They get to set that and determine how much of their costs they want to recover. So a business can recover up to 98% of all payment related costs down to
Hmm.
specific transactions, and they get to set that. We love it. We go into business. Business says, based on our market and our customer base, we believe we can recover about 68%. Would you help us get there? And we can set it and get there. And so we're doing that for a client, and the client says, how much again were you charging us for the card portion? And I told them, well, how much do you want to pay? They replied back, how much are you charging us for cards? We're asking you to own the cards. Well, we know the costs associated. How much of those costs do you want to assume? They replied back, we're asking you about the cards. So I got them on the phone and I said, hey, do you remember, and this is a larger company, do you remember the basis of what Securely does? We identify the costs associated. We cannot remove those costs because they're bona fide businesses presenting those costs. You want the services. There are costs. We help you control and recover those. We also offer proprietary payment methods and other forms of money movement outside of that. And they went, if I were in their office, I bet their hands were up in the air because with that absence of context, they had already said yes and didn't fully comprehend the value of what they had said yes to. So when we go to sell to a business, we have to spend more time working on a mental shift to comprehend. I've had CFOs stop meetings and say, is this too good to be true? Literally hands out like your umpire saying safe. So I apologize. I've had men say, I just got to say this. Is this too good to be true? Had another
Hmm.
CFO at I'd say a mid market distributor look at me and just say, "How can you do what no one else could do for us until now?" I told them, "Technology and millions of dollars, sir." That's really what we've done is we go in and we say, "How can we help you have context for what you didn't know was possible and see that it reduces the risk based on how our technology works, that we can keep you active where you're at and give you a bridge to move as the roads develop. It's going to make that Model T ride a lot smoother. But we've got a high enough ground clearance that we can still work for you today. So we're
Mm,
future ready, we're tomorrow capable, and we're today efficient." So I'll,
mm.
I'll stop on that one. I could talk to you the rest of today about that. That is the
All right.
crux of what we try and do at Securely.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic response there, Alan. So, looking at the future, what emerging technology or trend in finance are you most excited about that could further your mission of putting people back in control of their money?
Well, I think with where crypto, where crypto's going, the flexibility of the blockchain,
Yeah,
specifically, if you look at the stability of stable coins, where I
yeah,
think they're going, I think there's a bright future in money movement around that. The
mm,
wild card is always government regulation and interaction, and we'll just have to see
yeah,
what comes
yeah.
there. But I think the future is going to be incredible there, and there's going to be early adopters, and there's going to be those that sit back and say, "How on earth did I ever not adopt that?" Because they wanted to take their family to Tennessee on a horse for some reason.
Fantastic, fantastic. For people who want to build technology that has positive impact on people's life, what's your advice on finding the intersection between the technical skills they have and the human need for, the applications of that skills?
Yeah. I'd say first do your vetting on the front end.
Mm,
Once again, find a value-based company that you could be involved with. There's not there's probably less of them than we would all like, but they're not absent. They're out there.
okay, yeah,
And so when you find a value-based company that's doing value-based work, and don't let it be misunderstood that you could make good money promoting a strong value, a strong ethic, and being a promoter of good. So that doesn't mean you're in the not-for-profit world here. But when you find that, then take your technical abilities and go all in. Give all that you have. Be a learner. Be willing to learn more and apply yourself with a company or a technology like that and see what happens. We're in a world that everything doesn't always work as we plan. And so there's no guarantee to that. But we can say that traditionally, I would use this quote, traditionally, diligence is the mother of fortune. And so work your butt off to do good and see what comes of it.
great advice, Alan. So, a part of the theme of this podcast is centered around innovation. So, for that reason, I like to ask every guest I interview a question about innovation. So, in your work, creating a fintech platform that prioritizes people over profit, what does the word innovation truly mean to you?
To innovate is to go from where something is in its simplest form to where something can be.
Mm,
And the reason that we mistake innovation for what I would call just progress is because oftentimes it's once again, true innovation is largely revolutionary, not evolutionary. So you can have
mm,
change or progress without innovation because you're not to where you could be. You're just not where you were. And so I don't want to get
okay,
caught in semantics, but innovation simply is going to where you can be. It's recognizing and realizing potential and then accomplishing it.
fantastic, fantastic. That's a really interesting way to see the word innovation. So, finally, for our listeners who are inspired to learn more about transparent payment and how they can save, So, where can they go to find your guides and strategies and the resources that you offer?
Yeah, you can go to our website online. Obviously, you could probably hit us on LinkedIn would be a great place to connect. We work with, multinational enterprise companies down to even some smaller companies. And so no matter where you're at in that realm, we'll try and take a handheld approach to sit with you and understand your business and see how we can best meet your needs. So either way, hit us online or um, hit us there through LinkedIn. You can find us online at www.securely.io. That's securely.io. You can also find us under Securely on LinkedIn. My name is Alan Ward, and I'm associated with Securely on LinkedIn as well.
Fantastic, fantastic, Alan. It's been a really insightful conversation with you, and I'm excited to have you on show today.
Pleasure to be here. Enjoy always talking about where we've been and where we're headed. So I thank you for your time today, Ezekiel.